Hi there, Year 2 agents. It's Agent Yates here back at Rowridge HQ, and I've got a quick video to introduce your literacy task this week. So this week we are going to be using a brilliant new app to make our own animated movie of a story that we've written. It's going to be really fun, and we're going to bring our story to life, but before that we do need to write a story. So we're going to think about the setting, the characters, and a general overview of what might happen. We're going to have a go at writing that down as a short story, and then we're going to turn that short story into an animated film where we can use our voice and characters within the app that I'm going to tell you about later in the week. So before we begin, we need to look at a sort of overview for the film that we're going to make, for the story we're going to write. And this is the one that the app gives us. This is a classic story mountain. We've done similar mountains to these at school, but with slightly different wording. So I thought I'd run through it very quickly for you. So we need a setup. That's where we introduce our characters and setting. A conflict, where something starts to go wrong. A challenge that our characters must overcome in some way. A climax, where we find out whether or not they have been successful, or whether they're at their most risk of failing the challenge. And then finally the resolution, how our story ends. That's our story mountain that we're going to be looking at for our work for our story today. Now, I'm going to ask you to have a think about each of those steps, and all I want you to write today, ideally in your mission log, is a note for each of those. So what might happen at the setup with the characters and how they're going to begin. What's the conflict going to be? What starts to go wrong? What's the challenge that they need to overcome? What's the climax like for your story? And finally, how does it become resolved? What's the ending like? How do we get to a place where the story ends? Now, I want to show you the setting that I've found within the app that we're going to be using for our animated story, because it is a jungle setting. I'm going to show you two pictures of the setting. The setting in the app itself is animated, so there's lots of moving things going around. But this is the beginning of the setting. This is entering a jungle where one of your characters, perhaps an explorer or maybe somebody that's got lost, enters. And then I'll show you the next part of the setting. There is this hidden temple within the jungle where there may be hidden treasures. There might be things, animals or people protecting the treasures. Perhaps your explorer or children that are lost in the jungle find a way to the treasure and to be successful. So just thinking about this setting in our 5-part story, in our setup we need to start, for example in the story I was describing there, at the very beginning we have our children that are lost in the jungle, and it's the kind of the beginning of the jungle where it's a little bit rough and ragged. There are large plants and streams and waterfalls to be careful of. Then in the conflict it may be that the children that are lost can't decide which way they're going to go or have to cross the waterfall. Perhaps a challenge comes when they discover the lost temple and they have to think of a way to try and get inside. The climax might be as they work their way through the temple towards finding some amazing treasure. And the resolution in that story could be that they escape with the treasure, having had an amazing adventure. That's all I want you to write today, Year 2 agents, is a brief overview. So less than a sentence really for each of those 5 steps, but enough that's going to give you an overview of what you want your story to be like when we get onto our writing mission. Think really carefully, please, about how you are presenting your work, because you are going to need to be able to read it later in this week when we start to build our own animated 3D short film. I hope you enjoy this. Have a think about what might be happening in that jungle. I can't wait to read some of your ideas. Over and out.